Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Crossroads podcast, where we're going to be talking to anyone who's took an unconventional path, whether good or bad. So people that don't have a regular life and they have fascinating insights. So we're going to kick it off today with a man who's done a lot for me and my family, me and my brother in particular, helped us on our way of starting golf. He's been a pro since 1972. He's won 5 times as a professional. His biggest one was a European Tour win. There's some amazing images for, which I'm going to post on my Instagram so you can have a look at them. He's a fascinating guy. He's got a good heart. He's doing a lot for charity, and he's carrying on helping kids like I was and my brother was back in the day at Lim Golf Club and really kicking off that junior section. He's a man I respect a lot, and I'm very excited to talk to him. So let's bring in Mr. Drew or Andrew Murray.
Hi, Robbie. That's some build-up, that. Thanks.
You know what, Andrew?
Not sure I deserved all that, to be fair, but yeah, it's nice to be with you, and good luck with this, because it's a good, slightly different podcast as well. So all for stuff that brings new viewers and new listeners and new people to the game. So great stuff.
Absolutely, that's what I'm trying to do, Andrew. Obviously, I came from quite an unconventional background. I kickboxed when I was younger. I played football. Then, yeah, obviously, my brother started golf with your son, and you did a lot for my brother. And then I remember on my 13th birthday, he sold me clubs that you gave him so he could get better ones. And so that's where it all started for me. But you were a big part of me and still are today. You're a bit of a mentor figure for me, and I look up to you a lot with the way you carry yourself and how much you help people. So first of all, thank you for that. And most importantly, how are you, Andrew? How are you doing in quarantine?
Yeah, I'm good. It's like the strange changing world, isn't it? And it's going to be a very different world when we get back out of it. But I'm here. I live on my own. I'm lucky because I've got a nice garden and I've got a golf net there. So I'm keeping myself reasonably fit. I wouldn't say very fit, but reasonably. Yeah. And I'm doing a bit of volunteering down at the golf club at both Lim and at Didsbury. So I'm nipping to the office and trying to keep on track on just the simple stuff that's happening in the office. Obviously, we're all on furloughed leave. So the corporate golf market's going to be a very different one that we come back to than the one we left 2 months ago.
It'll be very interesting to see, won't it? The changes that have gone on. How obviously the tour's making changes. We won't go too deep into that, but it'll be very interesting to see how it all plays out. And yeah, I think everyone's going to have a newfound respect for the things that maybe we took for granted, the arts, sport, all things we've been relying on, maybe watching I've been watching a lot of old Masters tapes. I watched your European Tour win again, and yeah, keeping inspired. So we'll kick it off, Andrew. A good place to start is take me back to the start. So I know you grew up playing at Didsbury Golf Club, which is a great golf club. Shout out Pete Barber. I haven't met him, but I've heard a lot of great things he does for England golf, and I've watched some of his videos. So what does a young Andrew Murray look like? When did you first pick up a club, and what was your younger days like, Andrew?
Well, I mean, pretty standard stuff. Very much like you and your kid brother. I got a caddy from my dad. That's how I started. I lived a very short walk away from Didsbury Golf Club. Literally, I could probably hit almost a driver from the back garden now to the front of the practice ground. But it was a relatively short walk. Started caddying for my dad on a Saturday afternoon, and started hitting a few shots when he went in for a beer, and became the junior section there, and the rest, I suppose. I was inspired and still am really to this day by a guy called Brian Neild, who taught me when I was a kid to various little tournaments to play in foursomes events with him and stuff. And I wanted to be Brian Neild. That's all I wanted to be. It was an outdoor life, and he seemed a very contented, happy bloke. So he's now 88. He's not in the best health, but he's doing okay. And so I still see him occasionally and go out for dinner with him, which is not of recent months, obviously. But, he was a massive. He was another father figure for me, really, because as a junior growing up, I was hitting balls, staying till dark, down in, like you were every day during the school holidays, and became reasonable. I wouldn't say I was a world beater by any stretch. I was reasonable. I got down to about 8 handicap at 14 and was winning little junior things around about. I wanted to become an assistant pro. I wanted to become assistant pro anywhere around about where we lived in Didsbury. And as it pure chance happened, Brian Neal had moved to Bramall Golf Club. He needed an assistant as I turned my 16th birthday. I'd finished my what were O-levels, now GCSEs. And the day after I started work on the 1st of July, 1972, with him as his assistant. And I did my 5 years or thereabouts with him as an assistant pro, selling golf balls and Mars bars and repairing clubs and changing mud grips, and I care to remember.
Yeah, all that good stuff. So you mentioned Brian Neal there. Do you think that's been kind of what's led you to be so helpful to juniors and so understanding when people are starting out that they need a bit of guidance? They may not have all the equipment, they may not know the technique as well as they probably need to really start enjoying the game. Did he kind of instill that in you, or is that something you learned kind of along the way?
I think when I look back, and if I was to analyse it, I'm sure it probably did. Yeah, I'm sure the encouragement, is probably runs deeper than I think. I'd like to think that I learnt it more from the fact, or certainly as much, from the fact of having 3 boys myself. One, Ben, who was my eldest one, wasn't particularly interested. He still hit a ball up and down the garden and thereabouts, never as well as Tom did, who was 20 months younger. And Tom, to be fair, was every photograph of him when he's even 2 years old, he's grabbed hold of a golf ball. So he was hitting the golf ball. I remember him hitting the golf ball up the slide in the garden and racing to the other side to go and pick it up, to come back a bit further from the slide to hit it up the slide again with a plastic club. And he was obviously talented. He was more of a sporting gene than Ben was, but they all had equal opportunity. And Matthew, who was the youngest, he's 6 years younger than Tom. He's a fantastic player as well. He's in America, having done a scholarship. So I think Robbie, I think that when I moved over to Lim and we went down to Lim Golf Club and we introduced the boys to the club, at that point, they were too young, which I thought was ridiculous. They had to be 10, and I think Tom was 8, and he was better than most 15-year-olds, let alone 10-year-olds. Eventually, anyway, they let him in, and he became junior member there. And I think seeing their enthusiasm for the game, and 2 of the 3 of them, helped me as well. Definitely helped me keep my game in shape, and it got me out on the golf course playing more than probably I would have done normally. So the kids really helped me in some ways as well, and seeing them and then seeing their mates, your brother and all their mates coming along at various stages was fantastic. So I think I've sort of bumped into it really, into the junior golf stuff, and I'm very passionate about it, and I just want people to fall in love with the game that I fell in love with and get the pleasure that the game's given me. If by even half of it would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've inspired me a lot to kind of try and show people a different lens on golf almost. How much it teaches you about life, how much it teaches you about your own mind, about your body, about managing yourself when things aren't going well, how to manage yourself even when things are going well. And that brings us into kind of, obviously you're working as an assistant pro. When did you realise, or when did you really think, right, maybe I can compete for money, maybe I can make a living out of actually competing for this?
Yeah, I was probably about 20, I'd say, thereabouts. I was still assistant pro. I was winning 1 or 2 pro-ams around about the place. In those days, there was lots of pro-ams, all the Cheshire region pro-ams, and there was one at Bramall Park, and then there'd be one at Bramall and all around locally to us. And I was winning, more than my fair share, probably at top of the tree, I suppose, in that little pond. And all of a sudden thought I was a world beater and thought I ought to give it a crack. And of course I wasn't. I played the odd PGA Championship. In those days, you could play 1 tour event. This would have been 1976-7, thereabouts, when in the emergence of the European Tour as we know it now, really. And you could play 1 tour event, the PGA Championship, and try and qualify for the Open, which is what I tried to do every year. And I then went for my tour card at the first tour school down at Fox Hills in Surrey, which was a bit of a revelation. And 150 kids, probably as good if not better than me, all trying to get a card on the first of the European tours, and I did that, which was brilliant. I was chuffed with that, and I played as many tournaments as I could afford, because in those days, it was money as much as anything. I still was an assistant pro, and I was skint, making literally a week or something. So it was was a very different world, that has to be said, than it is now. But it was a dog eat dog world, in some ways, but there was a lot more camaraderie than there probably is now, because we had to share cars and we had to share rooms, and get to and from places. Literally getting lifts from each other, because if we were lucky, one of us had a car out 3 or 4. So it was a bit of a different world.
Yeah, it's amazing how much the game has changed. Obviously, very fascinating talking to yourself, because you must have played golf for about 50 years or maybe a bit more at this stage. And you look at the guys now, and obviously you've got a particularly interesting view on it, because your son is now on the tour. So it must be interesting for you to watch him in a different generation, kind of going through a bit of the struggles, a bit of the elations, the up and downs that is professional golf. How does it make you feel?
I think, I think it's harder. I think it's harder watching him play and being involved in him. I think I feel the pain more than he does almost sometimes. And such a good player. He's so much better than I was. I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying that. He's such a much better player than I was. That it's frustrating for me that he's not making a few quid and doing well on the tour, and he keeps thereabouts and he's not quite there. And then of course this happens, and he's got to be stuck on the Challenge Tour for another year or so. But he just missed out. He's had a tour card once, full season, didn't make quite the most of it, missed about half a dozen cuts by a shot. In some ways, he might have been too early for him to get a card. I don't think it was. And then he's had a couple of successes on the Challenge Tour. He's been very close to getting exempt on the Challenge Tour to the main tour again. Didn't quite do it literally by 200 euros or 400 euros or something. But it's a tough gig, because a lot of good players, a serious amount of lot of good players play that Challenge Tour. And to get out of that onto the main tour is very tricky. And, he's such a good lad, and he's such a good player, and he puts his heart and soul in it. So hopefully, by the very fact that is what his ethos is, he'll get on tour and do well one day. But it's fingers crossed. But the tour's changed massively. It's a power game now. It's a massively different game than the one I played. And I had a tour card from 79, I think, thereabouts, to 96, 95, thereabouts. And it was certainly 7 years before I started to make any sort of headway on the main tour. And I kept a card by the skin of my teeth, effectively. Look at the record books. And then I had a bit of a purple patch for a couple of seasons, really. I suppose I played quite nicely. I was a bit of a Joe Ordinary player, really, to be honest, Robbie. And I got a massive breakthrough in winning the European Open, which was, at that point, probably the third biggest tournament on the calendar after the Open and the PGA. So it was a massive 5-year exemption, big prize money, big television audience, 7 million people on BBC watched it. So it was that was a massive leg up. That was going like vertical into stratosphere, playing amongst the best players. So it was quite a catapult into the forefront of European golf, I guess.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So obviously you mentioned you kind of see yourself as kind of a middle of the pack golfer, which is quite impressive, really, because if you think about the amount of kids that are trying to make it, the amount of people that do try their hand at professional, and obviously I know a few, you know a lot more than me, and how difficult it is. What was kind of like your mindset shift between obviously struggling for those years, kind of try and keep your card, maybe doubting yourself, and then when you did have that breakthrough in that huge kind of tournament, what was going on in your head at that time, like?
Yeah, it's very weird because I've shared this story with many people. I was 50th in the order of merit, I think, the previous year, so I was a decent player. Top 50, qualified for Volvo Masters, and so I was an okay player. I was never threatening to win a tournament, and then 1989 I won in the Caribbean, and then I won a couple of little smaller tournaments, I guess, and I started playing okay the first part of 89. We just had our first child, Ben. Deborah became pregnant fairly quickly with Tom, and I was having an okay-ish year, and then I had a real slump around about the Open. I was struggling with my hip injury. I'd got an underlying hip injury. I was struggling to sort of get around the course without massive medication. and then I missed 3 cuts in a row. That I can't remember the first. It might have been the Dutch, the German, and then the Swiss Open. I missed all 3 cuts anyway, and got leading into the European Open with no form whatsoever, 71st or 74th or something in the order of merit, and I just got one swing thought from the guy I was staying with, so not even my coach, a car dealer, and he said, your swing's definitely not as oily as those guys that you were alongside yesterday on the practice. And we were alongside Woosnam and Faldo. Now, I grew up, and my career was in the shadows of those great players. So, literally, genuinely, Faldo on one side, Woosnam on the other at the practice ground at Walton Heath. And he said, we went back for lunch, and I was scabbing it, hitting it off the toe, and I was mistiming it. And he said, I said, what do you think? He said, I don't know. He said, your swings doesn't look as oily as theirs. I said, oily? What sort of expression's that? He said, I'm a car dealer. He said, I just sell cars. He said it's from here. He said it looks more rushed than they do. That's all I can say. And it doesn't look as fluid or as oily as Faldo here and Woosnam there. And I went back on the practice ground, and about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the Wednesday before the tournament. And I said, do you mean from here? And he said, yeah. And I started hitting a couple of good shots and a couple more good shots. And when you've got that excitement of a bit of a swing thought that you think works for, how long is it going to work for? A half a day, I had 2 more shots, and it lasted the session. And I remember warming up on the practice ground, and my caddy said, did you have a good session yesterday afternoon? And I said, yeah, not bad. He said, you seem to be hitting it nicely this morning. I said, yeah, not bad. He said, what's going on? I said, nothing. It's just another swing thought. I didn't even verbalise it. I was frightened of verbalising it, Robbie, because I didn't want to break the curse.
It is that way with golf, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same with the top players as it is for anybody else. And I remember I got on the first tee with a 2-iron at Walton Heath down the slope, fast running fairways. And I middled this 2-iron right off the middle of the club. It was a pure hit as I could give it. And I thought, it's pretty impressive that for me, off the first tee, time it like that, with this new swing thought of softer from the top. And I played all week, in fact, for 6 months of a bit of a purple patch that with the swing thought of oily. And I played nicely. I was leading after the one round. I was leading after 2 rounds. I was leading after 3 rounds. And then I squeaked in by a shot in the end from Frank Nobilo and some pretty good players. Woosnam was there. Torrance was 3rd. Woosnam was 4th. I think Lyle was 5th or 6th.
Yeah, wow.
There was some field. So it was to win from start to finish was unbelievable. And then to go on the next play quite well again in really esteemed company in Langham Trophy. So I had a real purple patch, Robbie, and it just gave me a bit of confidence. And I don't think, looking back, I should have done better than that, because I should have gone on. I had a bit of a squeak the following week. I shot 64 the following week, by the way, to lead again. So 5 rounds in a row at the Langham Trophy, leading by 1 or 2 from Curtis Strange and Greg Norman or something. I didn't go on. I finished 5th or 6th or something. And so I really had a purple patch, but I don't think I made as much of it as I could and should have done, really. We moved and we were nest building with, Tom had arrived in January, and I played okay for the following year, but I didn't play as well, and I don't think I took my game to the next level, really. And I probably should have done. If I'd have, I don't know, I don't blame anybody. I think it just was one of those things. I was trying to concentrate on making a living, and I didn't know how long my career was going to last because of this hip thing going on. And as it happened, I lasted 3 or 4 more years. So I was grateful of that. I was lucky. I was lucky. That's all I was. I bumped into a victory that happened to be a big one.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's interesting hearing you say, obviously, just how simple that thing was from that car deal, that oily, because that's something me and you have worked on in my game, that I'm very aggressive in the transition. I remember that's something that was a big turning point. I was getting far too technical, and I think it can happen in a lot of things. I've heard athletes from different sports saying that they're so into like the technique that someday they get a really simple thought, cut out the rest, and it just clicks. And I think it is as simple as that sometimes, especially when you're trying so hard to get better. You've got so much pressure. It's easy to overanalyze everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think if you could go back, what would be, with your mindset you have now and the kind of way you're talking about it retrospectively, what would be like the main things you change or you'd say to yourself?
I probably had the wrong manager alongside me. I don't
You
think
care to
Dave.
name him?
Well, I can name him, yeah, Dave Rodwell. But you know, he was a part-time manager. I don't think he did me a lot of favours in some ways, but at the time he was fine because I'd got a couple of deals with a couple of airlines and I was flying all over the place with them, which was fine. I think if I'd have been with a more professional setup, I might have done a slightly better. I think if I'd have, we were nest building and home buildings and you know, a new family and all that stuff. So there's, you know, with that, of course, becomes added pressure of becoming a dad again, and you know, all the stuff that goes on with the relationship. So I suppose, you know, it was never an easy time for anybody. Don't think that golf pros are immune from all that, or sports are immune from all the normal stuff in life. So there was a bit of that going on, and I don't think I stayed at. I think I was never quite big enough and fit enough, but I was really struggling with this hip thing, and I was under some pretty juicy medication to try and keep me playing. So all legal, of course, I have to say.
Just drop that in there.
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, I did my bit. I travelled, you know, over to Japan a couple of times to try and, I wouldn't say milk it, that's a terrible expression, but just to try and make the most of going over there as European Open champion. And I went to America and played the World Series, which was a phenomenal experience. At Akron, Ohio, when Ola Tharbel won by 12 from Payne Stewart, I think, if I remember. You know, so all those experiences, I was trying to play the European Tour. I'd already kept my card. I got a card for 5 years, so there was no pressure on, you know, top 125 as was then. And I think I took my eye off the ball a little bit. I don't think I pushed myself quite hard enough on the European Tour. I was making sure I made the money in the guaranteed events, because I might not ever play those again. So in some ways, I made the Open the following year, which was great at St Andrews. I didn't play particularly well, but and I had an okay year. I had 2 or 3 okay years after I won, and I wished I'd have carried on my form and finished, you know, in the top 20, do whatever it was in the order of merit. I finished 28th, I think. If I'd have carried on, and finished in the top 30 or something, I'd have felt that was big progress. And I didn't really. So if I could change anything, I would have changed my mental approach to all that, really, if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the time, I was doing the right thing by everybody, and my family included, so that was good.
Yeah. I've got an interesting one for you, Andrew, that I spoke to my brother recently before I spoke to you, and we were thinking of, obviously we know you quite well. What would be a cool question to ask someone who's been around the game for as long as you have and played at the top level? So here's one that we came up with. So here's a scenario. So you've got to put everything you have, your house, your money, on a bet on this one player. And we've got Mr. Ben Hogan behind me playing in his prime. We've got Greg Norman. We've got Jack Nicklaus, of course. We've got Gary Player. We've got Tiger Woods. We can throw in a few of the people that are at the top now, DJ. Out of all the players, Sam Snead, of course. Out of all the players you've seen in your life, playing at their prime, if you had to put everything you own, betting on them to win it and handle the pressure and take it to the finish line, and who would it be? Sorry to just throw that on you. I had a lot of time to think about that.
Yeah, well, I suppose, I mean, there's 2 or 3, I'd have to have a couple of stabs at that. And I think Faldo was, because I played alongside him, he was steel. He was the modern Ben Hogan. And he handled it unbelievably well. He handled everything unbelievably well. He was selfish. He was conceited. He was everything you'd want to be the successful golfer. Then I played alongside Seve, who was an inspiration to me as a kid and an inspiration to me as a pro. And then I've commentated on Nicklaus. So between those 3, to save my life. I never saw Hogan play. I did see Sam Snead play, but only when he was getting on a little bit. I think Nicholas probably. I mean, mind you, what about Tiger Woods? I mean, I've commentated 20 times on Tiger Woods. I was there when he won his first Masters. You know, how can you argue against him?
Yeah.
And he handles pressure. So because I probably played alongside Faldo a couple of times, I'd probably say Faldo. But as my would probably go Woods or Nicholas, because they handled pressure for longer and won more majors certainly than the others. So Nicholas is a boyhood hero of mine. So I'm going to go one player, Nicholas. There you go.
Yeah, perfect. And obviously
18 majors and 18 seconds, which is pretty impressive as well. So I'd go Nicholas.
Yeah, perfect. And obviously you mentioned Nick Faldo. I've read his book recently and I've been reading a lot into him, and he had a huge change in his career where obviously he wasn't doing so well, and then he went to David Ledbetter, and it was a long process for him, obviously changing his game completely, and then we seen the Faldo that we all know now. Did you have who was coaching you when you were on tour? Did you have someone to look up to? Did you have someone guiding you along the way, or was it off your own accord?
Yeah, no, I did. I still see my coach now. John Jacobs, who sadly passed away 3 or 4 years ago now, helped me a lot. And he was more of a mentor than a coach, particularly. I did have some lessons of him. Bob Torrance helped me a little bit, although I don't think Bob had as much influence as Ian Lee had on my game. The aforementioned Peter Barber has had an influence on my game as well. He's the pro at Didsbury. So Ian Lee was an understated pro who I played with in the Northern Region Championships, and I won it actually, playing alongside him. He was we must have been leading in second, and I finished up anyway, winning it. And I remember him saying, you know, you're swinging this and you're swinging that. Great to see. I've got this new equipment. If you want to come and see the new equipment at my studio, he said, I'd love you to come down. And I struck up a rapport with Ian Lee, which still to this day is as strong a bond as I have with any coach 35 years later. So he's still trying. It's ridiculous, really, because he's still trying to get to set it a bit better into the backswing. So, but he's had a massive effect on my game and a big influence.
Yeah,
somebody that's not been heard of, really. He's a very understated guy and a straightforward club pro from Wigan. So can't get more salt of the earth than that, really.
No, you can't. And it's interesting, obviously, we're speaking about Faldo. You played alongside a lot of great players. You mentioned Seve. Have you got any kind of moments that really stick with you? Obviously, it was the anniversary of Seve's death yesterday. I heard you attended his funeral and you played with him quite a lot.
Well, you know, Seve was an inspiration to everybody that was around, whether it was spectators or whether it was fellow pros. He was really good most of the time with the younger pros. He was God, wasn't he? So we were all looking up to him, and we all stood back off him a little bit. But actually, you got to see him and you got to speak to him. He was absolutely fantastic. I remember chipping with Pete Barber actually at the Swiss Open one year, and him coming over and saying, "Let me have a look at this wedge." He said, "I like that wedge. Can I have that?" I said, "No, you can't have it." I've got the wedge. It's a Wilson wedge. I said, "It's got my initials on it. You can't have it." No. He said, "I like this wedge. Like I have." I said, "No, you can't have no." Few stories. Yeah, I played with him a few times. Played with him in the last group, 2 rounds at Woburn, British Masters when he was leading. I was lying second. Neither of us went on to win, but I think he finished second in the end. That was an unbelievable experience because the crowd at Woburn were probably 6 or 8 deep down every fairway. And, people say that Seve was a bit wild. Seve was a bit wild, but he won at Woburn and he won at Wentworth and he won at Augusta. You're not that wild to win and he won at Valderrama. And, you're not that wild if you win at courses as great as that. So he could stripe it in a big way if he got in the slot. Seve was a fantastic driver of the ball, longer than everybody. He had the wayward one in him, but that's what the genius he was. Got one of my favourite memories, I suppose. was playing with him at Woburn when the crowd were really on his side. And I said, what about me? I'm English. Never mind all this go on Seve business. And they said, yeah, go on, Andrew. And Seve turned to me and he on my shoulder. He said, it no sounds so good. So listen, Seve, I've got a lot of time for Seve. He was a gent when I played with him. I remember the first time I played with him in the French Open last round, 1988. And we were 5 behind and we both shot 71 or 72 or something. So didn't finish threatening the lead. I think Faldo won in the end. But the atmosphere around him and the expectation around him, the anticipation and the expectation was immense. And he had it every day. I had it just that one final round. But he was intense. And when we finished that round, Robbie, I remember saying to him, what do I say to Seve after we both shot 71 or 2 or whatever we did, finished 15th or 13th or something. And I remember going down onto the green. He just lipped out for an eagle at the last hole, birdie 4, and we tied actually on about 500 or something. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't inspire you to greater things, Seve. He put his arm around me. He said, Andrew, I'm sorry I play so bad today. He said, next time we play, he said, I play better, I promise.
And he did, I imagine.
And he actually didn't really, but I played with him again in Spain in the Mediterranean Open. But the humility of him, he was just one of us. He just happened to be a lot better than any of us. He was truly, truly magnificent. He was a good guy, Seve. And Torrance would have done that, and Lyle would have done that, and Woosnam would have done the same thing, perhaps. Faldo definitely wouldn't have reacted like that.
Yeah.
And others wouldn't have reacted like that. But that just showed, I think, the human side of Seve. He was a top guy.
Yeah. And it's interesting, obviously, we mentioned Faldo being quite an introvert and very closed off. When you look at great athletes, you get the Seves that are very outroverted and feel the most comfortable, and that's their way of handling pressure, that they'll tell a joke to the crowd and they play off the energy. And then there's some people like Faldo, and Tiger's like that a lot as well. He shuts himself off, he'll put his blinkers on and he's in his own world, and any time he gets dragged out of that world, he's very uncomfortable. And I think everyone, for people that are trying to make it in a sport or make it in anything that's really difficult, I think it's important to find what's your level. Are you the guy who needs to shut everything out? Are you the guy that needs to stop trying to be so serious and make yourself enjoy it a bit more? And I think a lot of people don't realise that until later on. And it's something that I've been reading about, and it's the more people I look into, it seems to be a common theme that they find their level and they trust it.
I think they try and be something that they are not. I think you've got to be your own man. And I see that the top players now, the likes of Rory and the likes of Justin Rose and the likes of Justin Thomas and John Rahm, they are very much Tommy Fleetwood, probably one of my favourite players at the moment.
Yeah, same.
Very much, they're their own man. They're courteous. They've all got a smile, not a million miles away from the face. They're extremely good with people. And the top players in the game, I think, are just different class now. They are all terrific ambassadors for the game.
Yeah.
You couldn't have a role model than Rory, could you? I mean,
no.
What he's achieved in his 30 years of age is quite remarkable, really. And you've got all the other guys as well, of course, all the Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler, and there's an enormous amount of a pool of fantastic players who are all seemingly got great respect for each other, and that's what golf is for me. That's the epitome of golf. Yeah. Great respect for each other. You see that when the people shake hands after victories, and you see it in the Ryder Cup. They're trying to beat the hell out of each other, but the respect, the thumbs up from Mickelson in the Ryder Cup at Medina. Yeah. When we came back from the dead, the European team, at a European put going, and you see all that. That is great respect from those top players. I think it's terrific. Yeah,
I agree. I think what made me fall in love with golf is obviously as a kid growing up, playing with your son, my brother, my friends, their friends, and kind of we had such camaraderie, and we used to spend 10 hours a day, and it was just that's kind of what I want to try and give to juniors and give to young people that aren't really sure what to do with their time when they've got nothing to do. Get down to a golf club, buy a set of Dunlop clubs if you have to, and just get a few of your mates. And I used to remember we used to gamble, like only £1 or £2, whatever money we had at the time, or golf balls on little chipping comps. And that's the reason we were so good at a young age. Everyone, like I dropped 19 to 5 in a year, playing with Matt all the time, playing with Meeks, playing with Chris Hunt, great players. And I think that's what people need to do, is find people that are better than you and try and compete with them as much as you can. And obviously you did that on the tour.
Yeah, I did it on the tour, but, you know, my tale's a fairly standard one in some ways, I suppose. You know, that I was just disappointed I didn't win more, really.
Yeah.
And, you know, I went on to do other stuff. I went on commentating. I had a new hip, and, you know, thank God I'm healthy and everything else. So
yeah,
there's no point in looking backwards, I don't think, particularly. And I wouldn't check. What would I change in my career? Would I change a decision? No, I wouldn't. I had great caddies. I might have changed my manager maybe, but that's about it.
Brilliant.
But no, I'm absolutely fine. You know, I got a great deal out of the game, and I've made a lot of friends in the game that are still great friends now that I made 25 years ago. So, or 30 years ago, probably in some cases. So, you know, the game's given me a lot, and I just want to share, you know, the kids at the club. I want them to just try and just enjoy the game. If they fall in love with it, well, that's half my job, is to try and get them to do that. And I think golf clubs have got a reset button now after all this. From lockdown, you know, golf clubs are going to be struggling for members. There's no question about that. People are going to be struggling for money. There's no question about that. Economy's going to be dire for a while. We all know that. So getting out on the golf course and being socially distanced is a pretty good way of getting out in the fresh air and trying to learn a new skill.
Yeah.
And you know, it's got a lot to offer. Show me a man of 5 and show me, you know, that can play golf, and show me a man of 85.
Yeah.
They can still play together. There's a lot of respect. It's a great game.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously now you play a bit on the seniors tour. You're now a BBC analyst for Radio 5 Live. And
yeah. I bumped into that by pure. Well, I bumped into that. I've only been doing it for 30 years nearly now, Robbie. But yeah, 29th Open it would have been this year. Yeah, bumped into it when I didn't qualify for the 91 Open. I'd played the previous year, and it was at Royal Birkdale 91, and they asked me, BBC 2 in those days asked me would I be a summariser, and I did, and then I didn't qualify for another Open after that, so I got the gig, and I've kept the gig, which is fantastic. You know, I love it. It's the great camaraderie, great inside the ropes, great banter, great broadcasters, being surrounded by true professionals. You know, whether it's Ian Carter and John Inverdale, and more recently Mark Chapman. It's just world class. I wouldn't swap it for anything. That's my 1 week of the year, really. In some ways now, I don't play much. I don't play competitively much. In fact, I don't play competitively at all because I lost my ranking on the seniors tour. But that's just the way it goes when you get to my age, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think with the career you've had, obviously there's a few things you'd change if you could go back. But then you mentioned, obviously, it's put you in the mindset and in the situation you are now, and you can give your wealth to other people, give your knowledge, should I say, to other people through doing the broadcast, obviously mentoring people like myself or the young kids at Lim, and really passing on the lessons. I think that's got as much value as having a load of trophies sitting in a cabinet.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll wrap it up there, Andrew. I really appreciate you doing it. And
no problem. Absolute delight, Robbie. I always love talking golf. You know, even whatever time of the day or night, I'll talk golf to anything and anybody. But it's been a delight. Really good. And good luck with this project as well, because you know, if anyone lives and breathes the game, it's you. And a couple of good guys. Maybe we'll get, you know, a couple of the old guard on, a couple of the young guns on. Maybe get Tom talking about the tour and stuff as it is now. He might shed light on his what made him a tour player from playing with you as a junior, and now he's playing on the tour. So Pete Barber would always do a bit. There's loads of guys that give you time, Robbie. So good luck.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Andrew, and keep doing everything you're doing. Keep inspiring. Keep doing your charity work, and keep being you, Andrew. I really appreciate your time.
No problem, mate. See you.
you
Take
soon,
care.
mate.
All the best.
Cheers,
See you.
pal.
Bye.
Bye,
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.